Okay, welcome to Unity Spiritual Center, Pflugerville.
Yay!
We're glad you're here. Last week, Bruce shared the word surrender with you. Did an excellent job. I watched him on Facebook. Thank you for doing what you did.
You're so welcome.
And it kind of fits together with what I've been working on for the last 2 weeks. Last week I was in Unity Village at the Unity South Central Regional Leadership Conference. And the keynote speaker was Dr. Roger Teal. Dr. Roger Teal is now retired, but he's the man that built the Mile High Church in Denver, one of the largest New Thought churches in the world. 20-some ministers on staff. Been there something?
I was part of the church, yeah.
Amazing thing.
Yeah.
Okay, you're talking about a ministry. And he was talking about 6 strategies of building a church. So I guess somebody that's built a church like that, we should listen to. And one of the big points that really impacted me was radical inclusion. And that phrase just kind of really touched my soul. Because no matter what, we all have a hesitation. Anybody agree? How am I going to deal with this? What am I going to do? Oh my God, look at that. Can you believe that political person believes that? And we all have these beliefs. And the beliefs come from what we were raised to believe. And it has come in our lives over and over different ways. So we have amalgamated or put together a belief or strategy in life. Now that strategy in life has been accumulated from the world. Everybody there? And the world is made up of egos, I shouldn't use that term, regurgitating what they believe is true. So here we are as an entity full of beliefs that other people have put there. So it's a very, very interesting conundrum. And what I realized in the idea of radical inclusion, and I put it together with surrender. See, we are creative beings. We've been looking more and more, and I'm going to bring in some of the scientific ideas that are coming in now, and through Dr. Jerry Dispenza, through Heart Math Institute and other groups. But there's an energy for good in the universe. Over in quantum physics, they know there's an energy that they can't describe. And they know that thinking changes outcomes. Hello? We've been talking about that for years. So we are a creative speck of energy, basically floating in the universe, creating our world around us. And guess what the world is we create is what we think and what we believe. So it's a crazy issue of how do you change. Now, a lot of you know that I spent years on the speaking circuit, out strategic planning, working on management things all over the world, teaching people how to set goals and all that stuff. And that's using the energies for a world's purpose, which is fine. But it's still not the divine pattern, if you will. It's still the world's ideas of what is success. Anybody ever notice when you get around, people have to let you know who they are? We met a couple yesterday, fine, beautiful couple, but immediately within 5 minutes, we were at a barbecue, and they made sure we knew that he was this and she was that, and they had been there. So that's what we do. We want people to know how great we are, which is fine. However, what is the potential? And I keep looking at that, and it really has impacted me. This group of people is a very open group of people. We really are. I want to acknowledge you. Everybody pat yourself on the back. Come on. However, how radical do I need to be to include everything that walks through that door? Okay? And it really struck my heart of radical inclusion. It means including everything. Now, what I did was, I've been thinking about this. So I went into the Unity principles. First principle is all this is God, everywhere present. And so God is everywhere present, so everything is God. And Bruce gave to you, had that great God in everything. So everything that occurs in some form is God. Okay, because there isn't anything else. Because all there is God, there isn't anything else. And then the third principle says that my world or my life is the outcome of my thoughts. So when something comes in the door that's radical, I created it. Everybody there? Now, do I like that? No, it's not nice. But you see, I am the creator of my life, and each one of us creates our own world. So anything that we have created is up to us to accept and work with. There's a very, very interesting conversation in that. And that's the word, the interest to me was last week, Bruce did a full session on surrender. So if I'm going to change, what do I have to get rid of before I can change? The past. So Bruce was talking about surrender in the past, and believe me, he's an expert on surrendering. Yes.
Yeah.
If you're around Bruce, he keeps talking about, gee, I've got to leave that behind there. Okay? And that's what I call radical forgiveness, if you will. In other words, forgiving myself for the past, forgiving my neighbor, forgiving my family, forgiving my spouse, whatever it is, for the past. Because no matter what, they didn't do it to me, I was part of that creation. So as I forgive, that opens up space for the future. Now we talk about the divine pattern. There's an energy for good in the universe. That energy is perfect and whole. If you go back into Genesis again, you look at Genesis, it says that God saw that everything was good. So how can we look at the world around us and call it everything is good? See, at the spiritual level, everything is good. At the original intent, at what Joe Vitale calls the 0 point, back to the beginning, everything was created perfect. So what happened to it? We were given free choice. So here we are working with thousands of generations of thought that has created where we are. And unfortunately, that's part of who we are. So what am I going to do to change back to that divine pattern? Let all this go. Now, anybody agree it's not easy? You start thinking about all of the generations that have generated all the problems. And when I first started into this thing, I felt that I could, affirmations, I was going to say 1,000 affirmations every day, and within a couple of weeks, everything was wonderful. I also heard that, money just shows up. So I was waiting for $1,000 bills to come floating out of the heaven. And all these things were unrealistic. It's the application of spiritual principles long enough to take us back to the divinity that we are. So it's a different state of being, if you will. So it's kind of fascinating to me. Now, I've got all kinds of stuff on. I don't know how much I'm going to get to. But we've been working the Course of Love. I haven't brought it too much into Sunday. But Course of Love group on Wednesday, we've been at this now 4 or 5 years. And those of you who aren't familiar with the Course of Love, it's the continuation, we believe, of A Course in Miracles. And A Course of Love is changing. Literally, the people that are involved in it are getting a little weird. Agreed? Where's Larry? But it and the structure of it goes through and gives what they call dialogues. And then the last 40 chapters are called the last 40 days. And I'm reading from day 23, and it's been talking about letting go. And one of the basics of the Course of Love is it's time for learning to end. It's time to stop figuring out what to do. It's time for intellect, forget intellect. I've had to give up all my degrees, all my certifications, all that stuff. Why? Because it's not relevant in a spiritual context. Okay? It's okay here in this world, but we're talking about a different level of being. So it says here in day 23, it says, we are coming metaphorically and literally out of the clouds of the illusion. Now, metaphysical interpretation has talked about the illusion of life for years. It goes way back. And so everything we're experiencing is illusion that we have created. So it says it's time to let that go, surrendering the mist that was all the separate one world from another. So the mists of illusion have been created to separate us from each other and from God. Okay? And Valerie was saying, if you remember earlier, she was saying in her meditation, it's time to look at what your gifts are, not what you know, not what you've been trained in, but what your gifts are. And we all have different gifts. And I keep saying it's like the great orchestra. An orchestra is no good if everybody has tubas. Okay, but everybody's got to have a different instrument. So each one of us is created with a gift that they're to share. So it is time for us to look at that. So leave the past behind and come out of the mists of illusion. I like that metaphor. So we've been lost in the mist. Anybody feel their understanding lost in the mist? It's very descriptive. It really is. And so where am I going? What am I doing? Why am I here? All those questions are in the mist. And the truth is you're a child of God, created in the image and after the likeness, and you have divinity that you're expressing. So and so it says that. A lot more it says in here. I could be reading this for a while. But the idea behind it is there's a universal energy. Each one of us is a radiating energy center. You are radiating energies. And the energies that you are radiating are creating. They're becoming part of, if you understand energies, frequencies, when you put two frequencies together, they intertwine and become a different frequency. So you can imagine how many, we got 7 billion people on the face of the earth, all thinking radiate energy into the cloud, if you will. So, remember like attracts like? Birds of a feather flock together. So the intention is to get like frequencies together because like frequencies amplify. Okay? Dissonant frequencies actually neutralize and cancel out. Those of you with a mathematical background, maybe you could explain that to me. But anyway, so the idea is we are all radiating beings of energy, and there's only 2 languages. One is love and one is anger or hate. So if I'm generating energies of hate, what kind of environment am I creating? And I'm attracting those people that are victims that hate their life. If I'm radiating love, who am I attracting to me? And I'm radiating love. So Joe Dispenza, this is fascinating. And this is another book we've been working on. Hours looking at it. Can you look at this title? What does it say, Larry?
Becoming supernatural.
Say it again.
Becoming supernatural.
See, that's who you are at your base. Beyond the normal, natural state. You see, the world has told us that this is what's natural. You should be this way. Okay? And there's that normal, everybody does this and everybody does this, and when you reach 40, you should do this. And when you get to be 65, you need to retire. I think, why 65? I ain't there. I passed that a long time ago. Okay? Do you realize how many really great people have been sold a bill of goods to go out in retirement, and they're sitting there wondering what else is next? Okay? The other way around. Kids, they don't know anything yet. Maybe they're the ones of the future. So it's being open to everything. And stop buying into everybody else's traditions. Everybody got it? So I want to read what Joe has to say. And this is in his kind of his afterword. He says, because we are constantly deepening and broadening our understanding of the interconnectedness of all living systems. So by radiating love, are you there? We connect with other love-type beings. And so by deepening that and broadening it, which means what? Doing it, which we're talking about. So it means that by doing that, and because each of us is a contributor to the Earth's field, see, there's a field of energy that you are adding to or subtracting from. I believe we can collectively create and guide a new, peaceful, and prosperous future upon this planet. How? Not by doing things, by loving things. See, everybody wants to do things, but you want to do things from the world's beliefs. Okay? It's pretty well proven that you can't change behavior. People have to want to change behavior, which means energy level, not doing level. Okay? So it goes on. You ready? Oh, by the way, I'm getting excited about this stuff.
See that?
Okay? In Heart Math Institute, if you're familiar with it, there's the idea in an individual. They have measured the ability of the mind and the heart to connect. And when the mind's on its own, the sine wave is erratic. But when the heart is connected with the mind, it goes into what's called coherent, a very nice sine wave on an oscillograph, if you will. So they know that when I'm in the heart, they can see it in the results on the machine. Matter of fact, we're going to get one and we'll hook it up to a computer. And they also know this. You ready? When a group is in heart convergence, they change others around them into heart convergence. They have measured audiences up to 500 people sitting there. Maybe 100 aren't in that, and 400 are. After they measure the 400 going into heart convergence, and within a half an hour, the rest of the group is also there. So what impact do you have on a daily basis on your family, your neighbors, et cetera, et cetera? That's why it's important that we as a group get together once in a while. There's more here. Again, I could keep reading, but I do want to finish this. So it all begins by making a habit of practicing leading with your hearts, raising our energy and tuning into greater information and frequencies of love and wholeness. And what did he just describe? He described meditation. He described prayer. He described love. He described being quiet and approaching spirit in the silence, not out talking and campaigning and whatever. Okay? Very, very interesting idea. So, I haven't even looked at my notes yet. They're here somewhere. But see, this has really been working. And, where are we going? What are we doing? Why are we doing it? And what's happening in this group? Are we contributing to the world, or are we taking away from the world? And I'm either thinking this way or thinking that way. There's almost a divide. Okay? And the world is full of victimhood right now. Everybody has a problem. Everybody has something done. But the truth is, we are living in a world of love if we create the world of love. So, anybody familiar with the Good Samaritan?
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah.
And real quickly, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, Jesus talks about it in Luke 10. And he was asked, who is my neighbor? The phrase is, thou shalt love the Lord thy God, and thou shalt love the neighbor as thyself. And he's asked, who is your neighbor? Good question. And you got to understand the political issues at the time. Samaritans were the bad guys. Okay, they were, illiterate. They lived in this area. They were stupid. They weren't educated. Anybody familiar with educated folks? We all think we're better than others. It's true. And the Samaritans were those. Okay, and there was a guy on a trip. He was walking, and it's interesting, from Jericho to Jerusalem. Now, if you look at a map, Jericho is north of Jerusalem, so he's heading south, and it was historically a dangerous path to take. And he was robbed and beaten up, and evidently his clothes were all taken off. And he was lying by the side of the road, and the Bible, Luke 10, says a priest went by and went on the other side of the road, so he didn't have to see him. And then a Levite. Now, these were the leaders of the Jewish community. And then a Samaritan came by and saw him, put him on his horse, took him to a local, I'll use today's world's hotel. And, if you can imagine a hotel back then. But then paid for him to be taken care of. And the Samaritan, and this guy was a Jew, so do you understand? What Jesus is saying is, no matter how uncomfortable it is, you reach out and take care of folks. Now, there's a mixed message in that, in my opinion. We have to, it takes place on a thinking place first. So he made a decision to reach out and include somebody that he would not normally include. So that's where we are. If I'm a Republican, am I willing to accept the Democratic thinking? If I'm a Democrat, am I willing to accept the Republican thinking? I'm not saying,
I love that one.
I wonder what God meant with that. Literally, it occurred now. But see, the idea is it's not that I'm willing to agree with one side. It's am I willing to listen? Am I willing to understand where it came from? You know, you look at the abortion issue. You talk about a hot topic. Am I willing to listen? Am I willing to be open? Am I willing to include people just because they're a child of God? And that's a big issue. So I'm going to ask our board, I've already started that conversation. I'd like our leadership group involved. And I'd like to include that phrase, radical inclusion, in our mission statement. The mission statement's beautiful, by the way. It's on the front page of your bulletin. But in that conversation, anybody that walks through that door is a child of God and part of this community, and deserves to be a child of God on a spiritual path. We talk about a spiritual path. What is a spiritual path? My belief is surrendering, admitting that I'm a child of God and that I do have powers beyond the normal. So you see, we have to accept things. And we can deny them by not going there. So we have to accept who I really am. Then learn the language of God, which is silence. So spending a certain amount of time. Most meditation modalities talk about 20 to 30 minutes morning and evening. That's general. Silent centering prayer talks about that. Mindfulness meditation talks 20 minutes. Kriya Yoga talks 20 minutes. So it seems to be a universal time. And that is a commitment to separate myself for 20 minutes. It also means studying. I think it's 2 Timothy says, study to prove thyself acceptable to God. In other words, the world has taught us where we are. So maybe it's time to allow Spirit to teach us of spiritual ideas, if you will. I think we should have a college for spiritual ideas. We do. They call it Unity Seminary, which you can get online now, by the way. But anyway, I diverted on that. Are you going there?
Yeah.
I'm after a few people to be ministers in the future, so just saying. Where was I?
So list of what makes you spiritual path.
No. Sometimes I feel inadequate about that because it is such a departure from the normal world out there. The normal world was to keep us distracted. The normal world wants to keep us involved in music. It wants to keep us involved in education. And if you don't listen in those areas, you get into crisis. Everybody's familiar with crisis. So it's trying to constantly attract us. And the idea is take a few minutes every day, slow down, connect with Spirit, and allow Spirit to start reprogramming. After all this time, I'm finally convinced that I can't do it myself. It's called surrender. What I have to do is come into the silence and allow the great cloud we call God to reprogram the mind. And so that's part of it, and part of it is the educational process. The other part of it is being around people that think the same way. And to me, that's very vitally important. That's why I love all of you so dearly. We're on the same path. We're going together. This group is making a difference. In Pflugerville, maybe even in the United States, maybe even the 9 billion people in the world. It only takes one positive thought, one spiritual thought, to change my life and to change your life. So I'm encouraging you to be on the spiritual path. Carve out some time. Hang out with us. Come to classes, do whatever you need to do. And all I can say is we love you, all of you. And we appreciate you. And it's I feel like we're starting over. Like there's a new life. The metaphor of birth is an amazing metaphor for the spiritual life. Because the metaphor of birth means we've entered a new state of being and left the old behind. So welcome to the new world. Thank you. I love you.